Just started recording, so good morning. Hope everybody enjoyed their holidays. Just wanted to go over the training that we'll be doing today. It is titled, Should I Hire a TC? So first and foremost, I hope everybody knows what a TC is. It is a transaction coordinator. So the idea of hiring a transaction coordinator is to alleviate your admin pile as an agent. You can hire a transaction coordinator as a listing agent or as a buyer's agent. It's completely up to you. You do not need to, it's not a requirement, but it's definitely something that helps out a lot. Part of what they do and their requirements would be in order to become a TC would be somebody that's very efficient, very organized, and has extremely great communication skills. So ideally they would also have good real estate knowledge, so they're able to help throughout the transaction. The ideal situation would be hiring a transaction coordinator once you have more or less more than 2 closings under 1 month. Ideally, they want to alleviate your back office help. So basically they run your admin side. So when I would be hired as a transaction coordinator, there's different requirements, different things that they would do for you. But the main point is they're going to keep you on your timeline. So that's very important. The number one thing I learned when I got into real estate was deadlines are very important. You have to make sure that you hit every deadline, ideally before the 5 p.m. deadline on that close on that date that you have to finish that task. And they're going to make sure that you meet those deadlines. So ideally what they would want to do is, let's say you have the inspection period is coming up and you have a 7-day inspection period. By the 4th day, they're confirming that the inspection report was received. If there was any negotiations that was done between that inspection report for the buyer's agent and the seller's agent, and they're going to make sure that you are aware that on that 7th day, if you do not have something negotiated, whether it be a credit of closing costs, whether it be something that needs to get fixed, whether it be the sellers organizing and giving help and hiring a vendor to take care of the issues that are up with the house, then that transaction coordinator's job is to keep you on that deadline and to make sure that if the buyer wants to get out of that transaction for any reason, they're able to get out of that transaction within that inspection period time. So ideally, what they need to do is keep you on your deadlines and make sure that you do not basically mess up and miss out on an important date. There will also be the contact person between listing agent and buyer's agent. So ideally, the person that hires a transaction coordinator would be more of a buyer's agent. A listing agent can also have one, but it won't be as extensive of the work that needs to be done. So listing agent's transaction coordinator will mainly work with the seller, and the buyer's agent transaction coordinator will mainly work with the buyer's agent in order to get all the information that they need from the buyer. So on buyer's agent, it's a little bit more exhaustive just because there's more that needs to get done. Versus on the listing agent side, you are going to be the main coordinator, main contact between the listing agent and the seller. So you want to make sure that you have all of the documentation prepared, make sure that everything is done the right way, and make sure that you keep everybody on track with the title company to finalize and make sure that we're getting to that final step and everything is being done in order. For a buyer's agent, you will also be the contact person between the listing agent, the buyer's agent, between title company, and between the lender if there is one in that transaction. So you want to make sure that that person is capable and willing and understands the process of real estate well enough that it's something that you as a buyer's agent are able to release this contract and have a transaction coordinator basically take over the reins and run it for you. You also want their ideas. They will keep all the pertinent documents to this transaction. So ideally, us at Lifestyle, we have transaction desk. So we will make sure as a transaction coordinator will make sure that all of the documents are on hold. You have copies of it. So you have something to refer back to. So ideally with transaction desk, what we normally tend to have would be the as-is contract. You want to make sure that the escrow account is correct and is held within time, that the escrow deposit is given within the time frame. You are the communicator between the title company, so you have full access to make sure that that escrow is being held in the correct account, and you will be sharing that escrow letter with the rest of the team. So you will also be speaking with the lender to make sure there is anything that is being kept on deadline. For example, the loan application or the loan commitment letter. You will be the person that makes sure and follows up with the deadlines and make sure that everything is handled and put in the right place. For us and at Lifestyle, if the transaction coordinator is hired, they will run your transaction desk as well. Just finalize, make sure that all of the documents are uploaded. They can help you with the commission request form or a CDA. So the ideal situation is what the transaction coordinator does is acts as the agent, but does the admin work. They will finalize and coordinate all of the admin work for that buyer's agent. They will also review the contract once before you send it out, make sure that everybody that has signed in the correct places, and any additional addendums the transaction coordinator will be able to help you with. So let's say for inspection period, we do end up getting a credit for X amount of dollars towards the buyer's closing costs. So the transaction coordinator will be able to assist the buyer's agent draft up the addendum, send it out for signature, and then share it with the listing agent. Once that listing agent has the signed document from the seller side, then the transaction coordinator will be able to basically send it out to all of the teams. So the listing agent, the buyer's agent, the title company, and the lender will have a current copy of any updated addendums that have been added to the transaction. You also need to be very attentive to the title company and to the lender. They do two separate tasks, very different, and you need to be that middle person. So if a transaction coordinator should typically follow up, I would say at least 2 times a week with each person to make sure that the file is going through the right way. So typically a transaction will take about 4 weeks to close. So that is about 8 follow-ups. That's not that difficult to do, but it will alleviate the agent a lot more just to finalize and make sure that it's being handled and taken care of, and that alleviates your time without having to follow up with the outside sources, and you're able to not have to communicate directly with the title company, and you're just able to get an update through the transaction coordinator that should be giving you an update after every phone call that you have or every email that is sent. They will also coordinate the final walkthrough for you. So ideally, they will coordinate between the buyer, between the buyer's agent, between the listing agent, and between the seller. Whoever needs to be present, whoever would like to be present, the transaction coordinator will finalize and coordinate the final walkthrough for all parties involved. So best idea is they have all of the contacts that they need, and that way they can move forward and contact whoever they need in order to move forward to get that appointment settled and coordinated. They will also help with the association if there's any association. So for example, there was a listing that I was helping with the transaction coordinator, and we had not received the application, we had not received the association approval yet, although we had submitted the application within the 5 days when it was supposed to be submitted. So we were about a week away from closing, and we still had not received that approval. So I mean, this was a little bit extra, but sometimes the transaction coordinator, ideally what they will do is call and follow up and send emails to make sure that you get the application. So something that I just did a little bit extra for, I actually went to the association office and followed up and received the approval in hand. So luckily I was able to do that. So typically that's something that the buyer's agent will do, but if you have a very good relationship with your transaction coordinator, or maybe pay a little bit extra, they're able to help you and remove that task from your to-do list and are able to help you focus on the more important part, which is basically making sure that the buyer is happy, that they're moving forward, that everything is running as smoothly as possible. Also, I would definitely recommend to do an introduction email to the team, which will have the buyer's agent, listing agent, title company, any title company assistant that needs to be added, the lender, and any assistant that needs to be added under the lender team. So if they have any processors that need to be aware of every detail, so you will manage that email thread with everybody involved. And whenever there's something that everybody needs to be aware of, if let's say there's an addendum that needs to be added, then you are that person that will be sending, that a transaction coordinator will be the person sending out that email with the updates and with anything else that is required for all of the parties to have. If it is something that is solely between the buyer and the buyer's agent, they can also handle that as well. The list, usually it would be a buyer's agent that's hiring a transaction coordinator to handle their section, or a listing agent can handle the transaction coordinator as well. If both agents have a transaction coordinator, then that transaction coordinator for the buyer's agent, that transaction coordinator for the listing agent will be the ones in the majority of the communication and will handle everything moving forward from there. The final thing that they could definitely do, and I think is very important, is they act on your behalf. They will ask for a review. So whether it be from the buyer or whether it be from the seller, they can send out a review and ask for it, whether it's through Google, your own website, or using through Zillow, Realtor.com. So they will be able to add and ask for a review on your behalf. Any questions so far on tasks that a transaction coordinator would be doing for you as an agent? Okay. So the benefits to a transaction coordinator, besides basically seeing everything that they do, is something that they will alleviate the buyer's agent or the listing agent once they have more transactions that they can handle. I've had agents that have had one transaction for a few months and they will hire a transaction coordinator just to run that transaction for them. I've had agents that have 5 closings in a month and they hire a transaction coordinator for each one. So it really depends on how you feel. I would say usually it's a veteran agent that takes their time to hire a transaction coordinator just to be able to alleviate that agent's time and do the admin work that takes a little bit more, it's a little bit more tedious, but it helps the agent basically focus on bringing in more business. So on average, let's say a transaction coordinator is alleviating the admin work of about 15 hours during a transaction. Let's say just doing the addendums and tracking the deadline and making sure that all the documents are in order. So let's say that's between 15 to 30 hours for the transaction time frame. Those 15 to 30 hours can be better spent, let's say, building new business, calling to get more people interested, going and door knocking the area that property that is in, so you can go and drum up more business from that transaction. So the idea is they will alleviate the agent from doing the admin back end office work that would maybe take more time and take more time from the agent. Now, the reason I wouldn't recommend that a brand new agent gets a transaction coordinator for your first file, or if you do, I would say just follow through with them and understand the process. So for example, I didn't do any TC work until I was an agent for about 6 months. I wanted to make sure that I understood the ins and outs, and even that every real estate transaction is widely different and one can be very easy, another one can be very difficult, another can be, you have a lot going on between the association. So there's different issues that may come up and may arise in real estate at all times. But having a transaction coordinator that has experience in real estate and has done real estate for themselves, I would say is highly beneficial, just because you have somebody that has gone through it and has seen the process, has seen the issues that have come up, and they're able to help and delegate what needs to be done next. You as an agent can also focus more on your client relationships. So instead of having to, let's say, follow up with the association and make sure that they have the application that's coming up, or following through with the final walkthrough, you're able to have more of a relationship with that client. Make sure that they're happy with your service. Make sure that they would be recommending you to their friends and family, and that will alleviate more time for you as an agent as well. So bottom line, the transaction coordinator will help with your back office documentation, holding keeping track of everything going on. We'll keep you on your deadlines to make sure that everything is following through when it needs to be done. So ideally, a transaction coordinator is an amazing investment. There are different transaction coordinator prices. Sometimes I can go from a range. It can go sometimes maybe from 300 per file up to 700 per file, really depending on how much they do for you or what needs to be done or how difficult the transaction would be. But that's something that if you do need any help with a transaction coordinator, feel free to just send me a message and I can send you some recommendations or discuss and see why you would need one, or maybe help out and figure out if you want to get a transaction coordinator for one file or every file moving forward. So I hope that was beneficial and hope everybody understands what a transaction coordinator does and why you would hire them, or if you ever do need them for anything. I'll open it up for questions, or if anyone has any comments that they would like to add.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is the TC typically a different person than the VA, or could they be one and the same?
Your VA can be your transaction coordinator as well. It depends really as you as an agent. So I've personally never had a VA do the transaction coordinator for myself, but if you train them well enough and you feel comfortable releasing the transaction to them, then they can most definitely be a VA. So if you have someone already working with you, let's say doing your admin work or helping you on back end, I would train that person to basically become a transaction coordinator as well. I think that would be very beneficial. Just check the chat really quickly. I'm gonna put my contact information in the chat. Feel free to give me a call or send me an email if you have any questions. So I run the Dayline office for lifestyle. So if you guys are ever in the area or ever need something, feel free to give me a call, send me a text message, and then we can. I love to co-work with all of the agents, and lifestyle is great for that. We're very familial. So if anyone ever wants to work directly with me, feel free. We can work at the Dayline office and we can communicate and kind of get our brain juices flowing, see if we can drum more business. I love to work in teams. So anybody needs ever any extra help, feel free to reach out to me directly.